everybody. This is Tom Christie back in the painting studio, and this will be session 2 of painting Hunting Wigeon Hen. And in session 1 we got all the base coats put on. If you didn't see that, you might want to refer to it. In this session we'll be adding some of the details on top of the base coats. It is a gunning decoy, so the paint job will be relatively simple. We want to minimize the number of paint strokes and make it easy to repair and take care of in the field. If you're enjoying the channel and getting value out of it, please consider hitting the subscribe button. That does help me out, and it doesn't cost anything. It's totally free. So let's get going on session 2. Okay, we want to put some tail feathers, and I'm using the base head color and just going in and just a single stroke to kind of define each feather. And to do a single stroke, you need to have a good amount of water or fluid in the brush so the paint flows off the brush and doesn't stop and leave a gap. It doesn't always work. So I'll do that on both sides. And then I'm just going to connect the tips here . That takes care of the tail. Now I'm going to outline the primary, same mix, this head color. And I just want to keep these simple and clean. Make sure your angles match up. If this angle is too severe, you're going to be looking for a piece of the wing down here. So make sure it makes sense that that wing is hidden under this piece right here. I'm going to layer these in. Again, a single line, if you can do it. And then I'm going to do the tip of one more here as they're layered in. I'll do the other wingtip. Now I'm going to use my off-white mix and put these off-white edges on the tertials. Just a single clean stroke, if you can master that. And then I'm going to put a little white return on this upper side as well. And I'm going to flip the decoy around and just make a thin line here for the quill. Try to let that start thick. Raise your brush as you go back and fade that out. We don't want these to be too bold.
Just a note, I went back into these light feathers and added just a touch more gray value to them so that there's some contrast between the off-white stripe here and that feather, because we're also going to put some light and dark feather edges on here, and I just felt like that value needed to be a little bit darker. So I added just a touch of carbon black to that previous mix to take it down darker, another notch, not too much black. Now I just want to add an indication of some coverts here and also a few feathers between the primary groups and back. So I've got a little angle brush and I've got that head base color again. And I'm just going to go in and just use the edge of the brush, just kind of scrub an indication on there. And I'm using this rather than a detail brush because it gives me a little bit of a blended look and a softer look to these lines than the hard lines up here. And then I'm going to blend those out just a bit and kind of fade them in. Like that. And I'll do that on the other side up here. I just want some indications of feathers going towards the back. Don't want to overdo it here. Just kind of fill in that area. And I can use the point of the chisel scrubber and just kind of do a little bit of blending and use that texture that's on the decoy to pull paint off the brush. Put one in that direction. And then I'm going to kind of follow these lines and put a little feather structure in the side here, going down, and fade into this lighter area down below. Not trying to do every feather, just a few to break up that area and give it a little bit of a feathered look. These coverts have some pretty distinctive light markings on them. So I've got a little of the smoked pearl on a small scrub brush, and they kind of go across the feather this way. There's a couple of them on each feather, and I'm just going to put an indication of that in here. Maybe just put one. Oh yeah, I'll put another one back here, just to break that up and give it that hen widgeon look back there. Back to the primaries for a second with some carbon black, and I'm just putting a quick feather quill into each of these. Now I've got smoked pearl on this same chisel scrubber, and I'm just using that smoked pearl to go in and put a few feather tips and just, again, some arcs here to indicate some structure to the rump area here. You can see it's just a little lighter value than what's underneath, and that's the way we want it. I'm going to run these on up to the tail. But you can see it's a pretty quick job because this going on the side like this, and if you press, it gives you a little bit of a blended look to the scallop. One at the tip there. I am also going to add some off-white to these ones near the tail because it lightens up back here, and that smoke pearl was not showing up enough, so I needed to go back and add a little lighter value, and the off-white gives me just enough to show up here. I'm going to kind of fade that out down below. And then there are some dark markings under the rump here, kind of a burnt umber shade. I'm going to go and put a few there, and that'll be done. I've got a little burnt umber with Nimbus Grey and a small scrubber here, and I'm just, that's a little darker than I want. I want these to be pretty subtle, so I'm adding more Nimbus Grey. And I'm just going to follow these up the back underneath here. Looks a little messy to begin with, but I'll work back and forth and kind of blend these out. And kind of the next row down too. Just an indication of some darker feathers here. And then I'm going to leave the bottom light. I'll continue to work on that, soften it a bit, but that's about all we need under there. Just a quick view of that area. I'm taking a little clear water on a 1-inch brush and just kind of pulling it through that area to soften things and blend the colors together. It's just a little mid-course adjustment here. I don't like how dark this looks from the side, and from a distance that's likely to show up like just a very dark line under the tail and look unnatural. So I'm going to get a value that's lighter that kind of blends into the surrounding area and get rid of this very dark edge. Okay, I painted that a lighter value and I like it better. I think that lighter value is closer to this value and it kind of blends into the surrounding area rather than being a hard dark line there on the side of the decoy. It's a subtle thing, but especially from the distance, I think it'll make a difference. Now I want to put some side pocket feather markings on, and the edges of these feathers tend to be a little lighter. So I've got raw sienna mixed with the original side pocket color and a touch of white to lighten it. And I want to go in and just use the edge of this brush and just kind of freehand some side pocket feather edges. I'm not trying to make every feather here. I'm just trying to put enough on there to break it up a little bit and indicate that there are feathers there. Just a single stroke, and then come back and reinforce if needed. get closer to the front, I'm going to start bending these around so that they line up with the breast feathers. So very quickly, we have some indications of light feather edges. And I can just go back and do a little bit of blending. Just to intensify some of that color going over it again. It's about like that. Now I'm going to use some of the original side pocket color and kind of continue these feathers and take them around into the darker breast area. And kind of turn the corner here. Again, just pretty much a single stroke of the brush, pushing on the side a little bit to give a little bit of a blend. And I'm just kind of overlapping these. These are going to start to turn the corner and line up with the cape. You can really make quick work of, for a gunner, just with a single stroke. Getting their feathers lined up is key, you know, so they make sense, and the way they're laying on the bird. So I'll finish that up and then come back and we can look at it. It's just a quick look at the bird. Kind of give you a feel for what that looks like. You can see the breast still remains a little darker than the body, which is the way we want it. Now we can work on the scapulars and get the feathers of the back and cape taken care of. Okay, I penciled in the scapulars and I'm using this angle brush again and the original side pocket color. I'm just going to follow my guidelines here. Use the edge of the brush, and the paint is relatively wet here as opposed to totally dry. I'm just following my lines and putting a feather outline, kind of varying the widths from time to time. And I'm going to switch around and do a little bit of a return down here. Work from this back from this direction. With the brush having some wetness and the paint itself being a little wet, you can work pretty quickly. Get these cape feathers put in as well. So I'll do the rest of these. I'm not working a long time to get, you know, a perfect blend here. This is a gunner. I just want to have the feathers identified. Wigeon Hen has very unique markings on her feathers, and we want to at least show a few of those. So I'll finish this first pass and then we'll come back. Just another note on technique, I'm starting thin at the end of the feather, and as I go back, pushing down on the brush to widen the stroke a little bit, thin, and widen it as you go back. And I'll go over these a few times just to make sure the color is built up to the level that I'm looking for. Now I'm using this same light value that we developed for the side pocket and going into these scapulars, and there's kind of a distinctive arrow-shaped marking, and sometimes you see a couple of them on a feather, especially when the feather is long like this one is. I'm going to have to show two on that one. This one I'll probably just put one in here, just kind of break it up a little bit. Same here, just one. A little lighter value makes those pop out a little bit more. And I'm just using a little scrubber to kind of scrub that color in and try to leave it relatively soft looking. Maybe just put one up here. And these are pretty irregular shaped, so I'm not spending too much time developing specific shapes. But I think these markings are really important for a hen widgeon. So I want to put some in here. So that gives you a feel for about the level, and I'll go ahead and do that on the rest of the decoy. Some of these I'll have to come back and reinforce a bit if the color didn't cover enough, just make it pop a little bit more, and kind of fade those out as they go towards the edge of the feather. I darkened these areas just a notch by adding a little carbon black, and it just looked like they were a little too light. Now I've got some smoked pearl on a little brush, and I'm just scrubbing in some indications of feather here. Maybe do one that's coming from both directions here. Again, I'm using a little scrubber brush to try to keep these soft and not too hard line, but do it quickly. A little bit of a blend to soften the look there. That's about all we need on that wing patch area. Now I'm just coming back to this lower tertial and adding a little bit of a light edge on that feather, both sides, and then I'm going to put a little black along the edge as well. Just finish that up with I don't have enough water in the brush, so it's skipping over. So I put a little more water, and I can go back and clean that up. Like that. Now I want to lighten the belly as the side pocket wraps down here, and I'm using some smoked pearl and a little angled brush, and we don't need a lot down here, but it's definitely a characteristic of the bird. You see these light belly feathers pop up from time to time as they're swimming. So I'm just using the scrub brush to kind of scrub in a light value here. And build up that intensity so there's good coverage, and I've got a little bit of a soft blend as you move up the side pocket. Then I'm going to take a little of the off-white color, and following some of these feathers markings that I've already got on the bird, I want to, got too much paint on the brush, I want to go in here and pull some of this light up and tie into those feathers, just to give it a little bit of softness and structure there rather than kind of a hard line. And we don't want these to be too regular, so I'm going to break it up a little bit and just create some variation. Make sure I'm still in camera here. And then I'll work to create a little bit more of a blend just by scrubbing over that texture, and the paint comes off the brush in kind of a soft looking fashion. So I'll work on that, both sides, and then we'll go to the head. All right, now I want to work on the tick marks on the face, and I've got a brush that's not a super pointed brush. This is a Blick academic synthetic brush. I don't want a super sharp brush here because we want pretty good sized marks in these ticks. And I'm trying to make the ticks pointed in the front and kind of widen as you go back, and this brush kind of lends itself to that. So I've got, the color I've got is burnt umber with Nimbus Grey to soften it and lighten it. And I'm just starting to put little groups of tick marks on the hen's face and try to not create a real regular pattern, but break it up a bit. And as I start to go to the rear of the head, I'm going to start to make these tick marks larger and maybe do 2, 3 in a row to make little arcs as you get closer to the back of the head, because those marks tend to get larger back there. So 3 in a row here, and then move over and start a different row and kind of think of V shapes. V in terms of V, 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 V going back. Because we don't want these all lined up with the same spacing between them. We want some randomness and some pattern, if that makes sense, to kind of follow the flow on the head. So now I'm making these a little larger back here, doing 2 or 3. Get more paint. So I'll give you some progression shots as I work on this, but it's pretty quick work to do the tick marks. And think of the feather flow as you're reaching the neck down here. These feathers flow towards the back of the head, then they're going to go up and over the crown in this direction, kind of around the eye. Okay, I'll be back in a second. Just a quick look at the first pass going to the center of the head. So these will join up from the other side. Now I'll do the same on this side, and then we're gonna do a little bit of darkening of, there's darkening around the eye of the hen, and also just a little indication similar to the drake of this eye patch, but it's all in these brown shades. So we want to indicate that a little bit, and we'll darken some of these areas so the head kind of blends more into the body. I put a quick coat of dull coat on the tick marks of the face because as I'm doing these washes over the head, I don't want to start losing the tick marks. So the dull coat just kind of seals it in. And then I can apply these washes. So I want to darken this area around the eye. I've got a little burnt umber on a filbert brush, and it's more of a wash than anything else. I'm going to begin working this area around the eye to darken it. And then I'm also going to pull that back into this area and almost create, similar to the drake, this eye patch area. And I'm going to fade that out because it's very subtle. It's darker around the eye itself and then fades into the background. So in order to fade that, I just washed my brush out. Now I've just got clear water, and I can just kind of continue working that and make the blend a little more subtle. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to keep working this area of the eye to darken it right around the eye. The other thing I want to do is darken this area where the head meets the breast. It's a little too light, too much contrast there, so I'm again using a wash, and just on the underside here I'm gonna darken that area, leave the cheek light, but kind of take some of this contrast out down here and darken the head overall a bit. I want to leave the crown light because in a hen widgeon you can almost see a little of that cotton top look to the hen, but it's all in these shades of buff and brown rather than like on the drake. This will take a while, but that's basically the process I'm going to use to begin darkening the head and developing this eye patch area. And now to darken that area around the eye just a little bit further, I'm adding a touch of carbon black, just a very slight touch, to this burnt umber. And again, we're just talking about a wash here, so very thin down, and use that to begin to darken that area a little further around the eye. And we need to do some blending so that it doesn't become just a big circle there. It's definitely dark and then faded out into that eye patch area. I'll keep working on that until I get it to where I feel like it looks good, and then we'll move on to the neck and bill area. It's a final touch darkening around that eye. I'm going back with some carbon black, straight carbon black, and just hitting a few of these ticks around the eye just to darken them a bit. That looks pretty good. Just a final little detail. Since we carved this sleepy eye, I just want to take some of the original head base color and highlight this lid under the eye and just give her a little bit of a relaxed, sleepy-eyed look. Taking a little burnt umber, and I just want to put a few marks along this neckline just to kind of break it up so it's not a hard line there. Now I'm just using carbon black to add some bill details. I painted the lower mandible black. And this black is very thin. It kind of goes up and around the notch here. Then I'll do the nostrils and the tip of the bill here. The tip is kind of circular from the top, or semicircular. And then it returns a little bit on the side. So I'll get that painted, then we can take a close look at it. Just made one final adjustment after going outside and used a little raw umber wash on the head just to tone it down a bit. It was a bit too bright, I felt like, in contrast to the body. So I feel better about the way it looks now. Just to finish things up, I seal the bird with a couple of coats of Tester's Dull Coat. And then I like to add a Krylon matte finish over that. It gives it a little bit of a sheen, not quite as flat as the Dull Coat. And then the bill I sprayed with Deft semi-gloss finish just to give it a little more sheen than the rest of the decoy. It's always fun to see the pair together for the first time, and I'm anxious to get these out on the water and see how they look floating. Just a quick addendum to the painting video. When I took the hen outside, I felt like the breast was projecting maybe a little too dark, so I came back in, added a little raw sienna to the side pocket color, and just lighten those breast feather tips a bit and just kind of soften that and lighten the breast just a touch. All right, everybody, that's a wrap on the Wigeon Hen gunning decoy. I like the way she turned out, and it's fun to see her matched up with the Drake as well. Thanks for the encouragement. Thanks for subscribing. I really appreciate it. And until next time, this is Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you. Have fun with your projects.